Hey there, Janette.
Hi.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. I was worried like that I was on the wrong call.
Why would that be?
Because it's a minute before 7 and I was the only one on.
Well, it may be just you and me. And if so, that's how we'll educate the public. What we do are um, we record these calls. We land anywhere between 3 and 25 people for a call, and then we publish this in our newsletter and on our YouTube library
Okay.
to have it live forever.
Okay.
And we promote it, which we will do, and the main newsletter
Got it.
goes out to about 5,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
so that's our usual rhythm.
So I was doing really good on Zoom. I got on 10 minutes before, everything was perfect. And my computer's doing something really weird. It keeps duplicating websites and I don't know why. And so I've got to find the right version of the presentation. So I'm just going to flip over uh,
Okay,
and
do what you got to do. But
try to
this is
find
like it seems to be in the ether because everyone is having trouble with their technology this month.
You know, I it's been like for 2 weeks, for some strange reason, my Safari keeps having duplicate pages of exactly the same stuff, but the versions are different. And I had just finalized, made sure the presentation was perfect, was ready to go, logged on to Zoom, and everything went crazy.
Oh man, sometimes
Yeah.
that's Zoom. Is it possible that it's Zoom?
No, because I don't know I mean, that's the whole point. I don't know, but there are now like literally 15 versions of this presentation popping up, and the version I'm looking for, I can't
Oh my
find.
God.
Yeah.
So what did you save the presentation
I didn't. It's
in?
a Google Doc, which
Okay, so
didn't,
it's on a drive somewhere.
don't talk me through that because that won't work.
Okay, if it's a Google Doc, though, it lives somewhere, right?
Google Docs should be automatically saved and updated. I shouldn't be pulling up old versions, but I am. They've duplicated. It's a weird glitch. I can't even say. So I'm not going to stress about it, but I am going to just make a couple of quick adjustments.
Okay. I appreciate the fact that you're juggling some things. I understand that you're just arriving back from being out of town.
Yeah, it was my daughter's spring break and she wanted to go somewhere. And since I won't have her for a year, I was like, sure, let's do something. So
Right.
it's all good. It's all
I hope
good.
it was great.
It was all good. I'm always busy, so it's not, there's always juggling going on here.
The way the world, especially these days.
Well, what I find is that those of us that are trying to make a difference for some cause, you can pick the cause, we tend to work really, really hard at things because that's our side gig, right? So it's yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Okay. Well,
I haven't caught up with Beyond Plastics in some time.
all right. Well, I think I'm sure that I might have made a change. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of this one slide and then I think I'm good. As long as, you know what, I'm going to download this right now.
And you can take your time with that too, because we typically, I don't know if other people experience this, other organization experience this, but we never start on time. We usually start somewhere between 5 after and 10 after.
Okay.
So do what you have to do.
I'm going to consider this as pretty good. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit print.
Love the background of is that your store?
It is. It's just a picture of it, but yes. Yes, it is.
Sustainable House.
House. Yes, Sustainable Haus. That's it.
Remind me again what town that's in?
Summit, New Jersey.
It's in Summit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Centrally located, and we ship everywhere. That's a big
Okay.
part of what we do.
Friend of mine lives in Summit until tomorrow, and then she's moving to Portugal, which is where we just came back from.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a very nice brunch in Summit. I'm remembering I'm an omelet gal. We had a good omelet in Summit and a nice walkabout, but I don't remember your store.
Well, we're not in the center of town. We have parking.
There you go. What's the address of your store?
221 Broad Street.
So it's on Broad. Okay.
Yeah, we're out of town because I wanted to have parking, which was really kind of key. And we have, a good amount of space, which is nice.
Okay.
Store,
Very-
garden, all that kind of stuff.
Very nice. So do you, I remember Judith, who I reached out to when she was with the EPA, right?
Yeah.
Some interactions on the ground here, given Jersey City. Just as context, because we have a couple of minutes to kill here. Judith is pointing to the fact that the legislation that you guys are going for, which I'm not completely familiar with, within New Jersey State, but that in particular, you were interested in doing more with Jersey City. Maybe we can help.
We're interested in doing more with everyone. So I have a really strong belief that statewide, this is a personal belief, statewide legislation is not the be all end all. I mean, sure, that's a great goal, but I think it's so much more important for certain things to work on it town by town. Because first of all, governor doesn't want to make changes unless a bunch of towns have already implemented it successfully. So one, it's a more compelling story to push at a state level if you have a number of towns already doing it. That's number one. Number two, Skip the Stuff is a great example. My daughter
I'm
lived
sorry,
in
which is a great example?
Skip the Stuff. Are you familiar with Skip the Stuff?
No, I'm not.
So everybody should be skipping the stuff.
Are we talking about the story of stuff related?
No, no, no. The stuff is all of the plastic utensils, condiment packets, chopsticks, straws, um, all the stuff that comes with takeout. All the
Okay.
plastic and single-use stuff that comes with takeout. And, you know, I've been skipping the stuff kind of like for years and years and years, right? When I do takeout, I make sure there isn't any stuff in my bag and push it back to them. But the idea of skip the stuff legislation is that it's an opt-in. So if you go to a restaurant for takeout and you want any of the stuff, you want a ketchup packet, a soy sauce, a chopstick, a fork, a napkin, a straw, whatever, you just say, I want it, and they give it to you. But they can't automatically give it to you because they're creating waste and trash, and it's crazy. So skip the stuff legislation, I think makes a whole lot more sense town by town, because my daughter who lives in LA, for example, California has skip the stuff across the state. And every time she does takeout in LA, she gets the stuff. She never asks for it. She doesn't opt in, but the restaurants just don't do it. They're not aware. They don't know. So when Lois and I got it passed in Westfield, it was mostly Lois, I should say. She went around to a bunch of the restaurants and talked to them about it, got their buy-in. We got the legislation passed through the town council. And then Lois and I went around to all the restaurants again, literally like 30 or 40 of them, and we made sure they were educated. And once you've done that, then the restaurants are going to comply because they save money. It's a win for them. But you got to
Totally.
educate.
So the big gap is the restaurateur education.
It's not even
Or
the restaurateur, it's the people who work there.
the food establishment education.
It's the people who work there. Yeah. So I think that if we work on a lot of things locally, town by town, we start to educate more. And the model is the same for the store, right? If I can educate you or anyone on one thing, right? If I get you to switch to a shampoo bar, it's not the bar that I've sold. I don't care about that. You then tell,
Right.
you love it. You tell your daughter, your mom, your book club people, your network, your friends, and all of a sudden you got 10 people trying a shampoo and conditioner bar. And then one day, all 10 of you wake up and you go, why am I buying my dish soap in a plastic bottle? And you make that switch. And then you start to wonder, well, if my clothes are all synthetic, why am I wearing fast fashion? And then you all of a sudden think about an EV vehicle and alternate energy for your house. And before you know it, you have made all kinds of household changes, all kinds of personal changes, and you've become a really green person. And so that one shampoo bar is the thing that kind of started everything rolling. So that's
Ignition
my
switch,
belief.
yes. No,
Yeah,
I'm
so
with
I
you.
think
I'm definitely with you there in terms of personal practices that, and you educate to inspire, and it goes from there. I was pointing to that, Judith had mentioned that your priority was going to be the legislation. So
I would say that
what's going on with legislation at the state level?
well,
Which legislation are we talking about?
so for Beyond Plastics New Jersey, I would say we have several priorities. Obviously, which we're going to talk about today, the Packaging Reduction Stewardship Act, or extended producer responsibility, that is a priority of ours. And that's a statewide piece of legislation, and it's making progress, but it's got a long way to go. Skip the Stuff is super important to us, and we have about 19 different towns already having passed legislation and a lot more in the works. Thirdly, I think both Lois and I think this is really important, really creative, and really interesting, which is the oh, let me say it. Hang on. It's the the plastic construction waste containment, or plastic construction debris containment. And it's pretty much the first of its type of legislation across the country that we can find. And we have about 6 to 9 towns that have passed it already. And so, when you cut through PVC piping or decking material that's plastic or Tyvek or Aztec, I think it's called, and you get those little white, like snow-like
Yeah.
particles. Okay, well, frankly, that is just littering if you want to be really basic about it. But that litter ends up getting into our soil, our air, and our water. And it's basically a microplastic going direct to bad places. So we've been working on passing containment legislation, and it's not to say that you can't use the materials or anything like that. It's just saying you need to sort of encompass it and contain it and clean it up so that it doesn't end up in our soil and water and air. It's really basic.
Totally. I mean, there are tools that suck up what they are cutting up into a bag as they're doing that,
Yep.
which can be protocol in the way that they use that material potentially.
And there's also tents. There's a whole bunch of different things that people can do, and it really depends on, what it is you're doing. I mean, if you've got a deck built and then you're cutting all the edges, like there's things that work better or don't work better, but there's lots of solutions. Absolutely. So those
Okay.
are our three main legislative priorities. They're all very different. They're all centric around plastic. And I would say, fourthly, it's really about educating. So we are just trying to grow because Lois and I only co-founded Beyond Plastics New Jersey just a year and a half ago. And so we're working really hard to just grow. Our Instagram account has, oh gosh, I'm going to check because I can't remember. But we're doing pretty good from a follower perspective, and that's where we do most of our education.
So
We
if you tag us, we have a pretty robust social media following.
Okay.
So we can sort of maybe, you know, help you reach out a little bit more here, at least locally.
Yeah, so we have 2,144 followers, and for an account that's only been doing this, I'm the only one who does our social media. It's been again a year and a half, and we think that's a really amazing accomplishment. We actually have more engagement usually than national does. So we've accomplished a lot with that, but
So
it's
what's your local handle then?
Beyond Plastics, that's plural NJ.
So
And
it's the
what's yours?
NJ. Okay, gotcha. So
And
we'll
tell me what
include
yours is.
you and we'll tag you back
And what's yours?
at Sustainable JC.
So really the best thing you can do for each other is comment, share, and save it.
Yep,
So I
very
will.
good. So
Uh,
let's continue here. People will join as they do. But since we're recording this, what I want to be able to do is share this even after the meeting.
okay.
And I've learned a lot so far. You know, a couple of the things that we were most interested in. We had participated, there was a group of us in the Rutgers Health Summit previously that had a focus on plastics and the health ramifications of those, you know, the micro nano entering our food supply, all of that, which scared a bunch of us. And not for anything, Lois had mentioned that you were pretty savvy about that whole topic. We just covered off a little bit on legislation, so I want to open this up in any direction you want to take it.
So I have a deck. I've got about 30 slides. I can blow through most of them. I thought we'd spend the most amount of time on the packaging reduction legislation. We want to be really actionable, so we have definitely action steps for people to take, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. When you say packaging reduction, so I have three pieces of legislation: the skip the stuff, the extended producer responsibility legislation, and then the plastic construction debris containment. So is
So
there a fourth piece?
no, so extended producer responsibility is what most of the world knows it as, literally. But New Jersey, because we're special, ours is called Packaging Reduction Stewardship Act, and I've got both of the Senate and Assembly bill numbers for you. but it's EPR. It's the same thing. We just gave it a fancier name.
The
And that wasn't
packaging
us.
reduction.
Stewardship Act.
Okay, thanks.
Packaging
Okay.
Reduction Stewardship Act. I have slides if you want to share a screen, I can pull them
Yeah,
up.
but
Okay.
you're open to do that. You're
Okay,
ready
so let's
to do
see.
that.
All right, let me.
So if there's a call to action at the end of this, we'll include that in our next newsletter.
So do I just go share, press the share button?
Yeah. Okay, great. So if you expand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it is just not wanting to do what I'm wanting it to do. So I'm
It's
just,
a little bit swiped on the left
I know,
margin side.
I am very much aware of that. And as I try to literally move it, it doesn't, it doesn't go anywhere. It's kind of funny. And then if I press slideshow, okay, there we go. Maybe that'll work.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. That's where
Terrific.
I want it to be. So I am Janette Spiezio. I am co-founder and co-chair of Beyond Plastics New Jersey with Lois Krause. Lois manages all the email, and she's definitely the brains behind the organization.
Oh my goodness.
She is. She is. But we are really good together. And you can find us predominantly on Instagram, Beyond Plastics NJ. And I also own and run Sustainable Haus, which is also on Instagram. I'm an entrepreneur. Both Lois and I are climate reality leaders. We've been in various positions in the Westfield Green team. So we do all that. Okay, and here we go. So the first few slides I was going to focus on, and Deborah, ask any questions, or if anybody else joins, they can certainly ask any questions at any time. And I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. If you want the deck later on, just let me know and I'll send you a copy.
Please do, because we're going to post this with the recording.
Okay, great. So I don't like to spend too much time on facts and figures, because I'm hoping that most of the people that are going to end up engaging with this will have a lot of the information. But I think it's always worth noting the US is 4% of the world's population. We use 24% of the natural resources on the planet. We generate 12% of the solid waste. And every person in the US produces about 116 pounds of single-use plastic per year. And that was a 2019 figure. I'm pretty sure it's way above that now. Plastic overall is just, we keep learning how bad it is, and yet it is just increasing at rates that just scare me. So since 2000, more than half the plastic ever produced on the planet has been produced since 2000, more than half. And it's expected that the plastic.
Wow.
I know, right? Right? In an era where we should be enlightened and understanding this. And global plastic waste is set to triple by 2060. So that's, it
I'm
just,
aghast at that. Okay.
yeah, it is mind blowing. Less than 6% of plastic is recycled. We'll talk more about that later on. And 15 million tons enter our ocean every year. And I'll talk about what kind of plastic enters the ocean too. Whoops. The bottom line, as you probably know, Deborah, is we cannot recycle our way out of the problem. I know you wanted us to talk a little bit about micro and nanoplastics, so we're going to cover that just kind of briefly. But basically, let me just start by saying that all plastic ever produced is still here. How is that possible? Well, when plastic is produced, the only thing that really happens to it is it gets smaller. So when people say like, oh, that'll biodegrade in 100 years, 1,000 years, whatever, they just mean it gets smaller. It doesn't go away. The only place that it goes are, there's only, well, I guess three places. It could end up in the ocean and our water and land and water, right, in the atmosphere. It can get burned, and then it's still in the atmosphere. The chemicals are still up there, and it can get buried in landfill. So it's still here. It's always still here. The difference between micro and nanoplastics, I would say there's really 2 points to make here. Microplastics are simply less than 5 millimeters, and nanoplastics are less than 1 micrometer. So it's just the size. So the first point is just their size. And the second point is that the nanoplastics in the human body are crossing the blood barrier. So that's where we're seeing all the damage. We're not seeing damage, but we are seeing the data and lots of headlines starting to cover, and we'll talk about this again, how plastics are getting into our body. And it's really those nanoplastics that are just kind of everywhere.
Thank you.
And this is just a little chart that kind of just shows you the picture of it. So, you know, a lot of us, when we look at these pictures of plastic in the ocean, we see the big stuff, right? The bottles, the debris of all different sorts, the packaging, the plastic bags. But a lot of what's in the ocean comes from textiles. So almost all the clothing we wear, especially as women, are synthetic. So I'll just be quick about this one, but nylon, spandex, polyester, lycra, all of that is just plastic. And even if you are wearing, like I am, wool and cotton, it's all stitched with polyester or nylon thread. It's plastic. And any elastic you have is plastic. So all of that is plastic. And every time you do laundry, large quantities of nanoplastics are ending up going out with the wastewater, and that ends up finding its way into the oceans. So this is a big part right here. And
that was something that I was unaware of, the fact that every time you do laundry of your clothing, that there are nanoplastics going out with your wastewater. Is there anything that would prevent that?
Well, yes, there's a few things. Don't wear plastic, don't wash plastic as much, right? That's number one. Like the stop part is the most important. Secondly, you can find filters. There are a couple of other, I'm just going to say, like entrepreneurial projects like a Cora ball or a guppy bag. I don't find them to be very effective. I've spent time using them. I don't think they do much. You won't find synthetics in my house, almost none. We're like near zero. So that's really the biggest thing you can do.
Okay.
And the last section right here with tires and paints and things like that. I'm guessing that when I show this, most people think, oh, who's dumping tires in the ocean, right? It's really not that. So, you know, you're driving along and your tires aren't really that effective. You're getting you're skidding a bit, and you go and you check the tread and you notice it's down to like, you know, less than a dime fits in there, and your tread is worn down. Where's that gone? That tread ends up on the roadways. It gets washed away. That's creating those micro and nanoplastics that are getting into our ocean because it's washing away.
Got it.
So every time when you snow shovel, if you're shoveling with a plastic shovel, which most people do, it's leaving behind bits of plastic. The snow melts, the plastic goes with it. It ends up getting into our environment.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, we get the little critters that eat it. Bigger critters eat the little critters, so on and so forth. And all of that ends up in us humans specifically. This slide really has 2 points to make. And so I'm just going to say we inhale plastic, we eat it and drink it, and we absorb it. And then where does that go? Well, it ends up and there's articles to sort of show all this. Plastic has been found in our blood, placentas, testicles, organs like liver and kidneys, breast milk. I think I said placenta. It's throughout our body. The latest from a couple months ago is that the average person has 7 grams of plastic in their brain. That is a plastic spoon worth.
Wow.
So a plastic spoon is the amount of plastic we have collectively in our brain, in our brains. That is like tremendously scary to me.
Yes.
So I like to focus personally on the fact that plastic is a health issue. And that's the reason that you will not find me drinking from plastic, eating from plastic, buying food in plastic. And when I say these things with absolution, understand that we live in such an unbelievably imperfect world that there's always some plastic around your food. It's like getting to zero is you're homesteading in Alaska to do that. So health issue is my main focus. I'm going to go on to say that I mentioned Lois and I are both climate reality leaders, and I don't like to actually call it climate change. I think of it as a climate crisis because it's a crisis. It's not just change. Climate always changes, but we are in a crisis. And because plastic never goes away, and because of it being basically a gas or petroleum-based product, at every stage of its production, it is harming the environment and contributing to the climate crisis at every stage. So that's really kind of what this report from Beyond Plastics, the national organization, is about. And that's really one of the main points about plastics. Cracking, different from fracking. Cracking is the process in which they create these little nurdles like you see over here. And I think a lot of us think of these little bits of plastic as being something that we can then,
Those
these are,
nurdles coming from?
well, these are virgin, right? These are ones that they're creating. This is
Okay.
how plastic containers are made, right? They create these nurdles and then they go into production to produce containers and packaging. But most
So
of
is that from a recycling process or that is raw material? Okay.
that's virgin.
Okay.
But it's getting everywhere, right? We have container spills, they're releasing it with wastewater. I mean, this kind of stuff you can imagine just gets everywhere. So containment is a big issue, just like the construction waste we were talking about. Most of us, when we think of recycling, think that plastic container, I don't have one. Oh, I got a lid. Think that a piece of plastic gets broken down into these nurdles and then they can be made into new plastic. But that is absolutely not what happens. It's what we want to imagine happens, but it's not what actually happens.
So back to that slide, the term cracking.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So it's the process in which they take petroleum and they do this thing, this sort of cracking. It's what they call the process that makes these little nurdles, which is the plastic that then gets used to make all kinds of plastic materials.
Okay.
The other important thing about plastic, so we talk about being a health issue, a climate issue, and this is really important, and this drives me crazy, is it's a huge environmental justice issue. So when we think about New Jersey, for example, let's just talk about trash for a second. My trash in Westfield goes to, I think it's Rahway or Newark. I think it's Newark, and Summits, I think, goes to Rahway. But trash is burned in New Jersey. It's called clean energy. Just let that sink in for a second. Our trash is burned for clean energy in low-income communities, and this is the environmental justice issue. And the same is true for plastic recycling. So plastic ends up in trash and being burned in low-income communities. Recycling of plastic we're going to talk about how that's done. That ends up in low-income communities. And a great example is Cancer Alley, which is that whole like Gulf Coast of Louisiana and Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah, what we have here in Jersey City, we're calling Asthma Alley. And, a lot of this because we're downwind from Newark and Elizabeth with their incinerators.
Mhm.
And that, because in Hudson County here where we live, we export all our garbage to be incinerated elsewhere. And
Where?
the irony, Newark,
Yep.
Elizabeth,
Yep.
elsewhere, but the irony is that it's blowing back here and making people sick.
Yeah. And, of course, there's regulation around that, right? They have to have certain controls over how they burn it and what gets released in the air. But most of these places tend to have really high volumes of infractions. They
Absolutely. And there's, what we're finding is that there's regulatory for each of these individual chemical compounds, but there's not legislation that covers off on cumulative impacts.
right, right. And really, so when I talk about plastic as a health issue, I'm really about living a non-toxic life. And there are toxins in everything. There are thousands of chemicals in plastics, but in all the consumer products you use, you would be shocked by what's in most of them.
Probably,
And
yeah.
and we offer just at Sustainable House, we have better choices. That's kind of the whole point. But when you start to think about that, a little bit of phthalate or bisphenol A or petroleum or, dioxane, how bad can a little bit be? But it's that cumulative effect. And then as we start to get older, it's years and years and years of cumulative effect. And
Right.
children are being born with really high amounts of a lot of different chemicals because they're getting it from their parents. So they're starting with a toxic load. And then they're being given sippy cups and baby bottles that are plastic and pacifiers that are plastic and toys that go in their mouth that are plastic and teethers that are plastic and they're being they're
Like, oh
wearing
my
plastic
God. Yeah.
clothing and they have bedding that's flame retardant and I just can't like just thinking about it is upsetting to me. So a big part
And
of the
it's quite
cure.
overwhelming to try to navigate, particularly if you're of lesser means, given that some of the alternative options are expensive options. So in terms of what's out there and choices that people have to make in terms of readily available, either household items or items that you may expose your children to, it just seems that it's prevailing with the more dangerous options.
So I'm just going to say one small thing. um, I do not agree. I am
Okay,
somebody who spends a lot of time.
that's not a small thing.
Well, I agree and I don't. I agree and I don't because I think if you live a typical American life following all the marketing that you're given, you'd be correct. But if you spend a little time educating, and that's a lot of what I do, there are so many small changes you can make, and you start making them, they all save money, every single one of them. And yeah, you could spend a lot of money on sustainability or a little bit of money. So I'll just give you a couple of quick examples, and I want to get us back to EPR. But laundry detergent in powder form that we sell is 15 cents a load. 15. There isn't anything cheaper. Um, Once you start down this path, we have $1.25 refill for counter cleaner. We can teach you how to make any kind of household cleaner you need for pennies on the dollar. Once you start thrifting clothing, oh my gosh, like free markets and thrifting is a great way. You don't really need much of a clothing budget. Same with furnishings. And the older stuff is actually wood. It's real. It's not plastic.
Right.
So once you start and realize you don't need all that garbage, it's huge. But you do have to spend more on food because you can't buy processed food. So, and it's not even spending more, it's spending differently. You have to make a lot more. You have to learn how to do these things yourself. You can't go to the store and buy processed food. That's the biggest issue. So
Okay,
if
point
you're about
taken.
convenience, that's the problem.
Understood.
Okay. Um, So plastic, so two things happen to plastic. You put it in your trash because it's packaging and there's no way to recycle it. And you put it in your trash and it gets incinerated. Or you send it to recycling. And recycling means locally, there's a hauler, they pick it up from the curb, they bring it to a place somewhere in Jersey City where they, make sure it gets into the right piles. And then it gets baled and sent off to a recycling center like Sims, for example, in Brooklyn.
We have Sims Recycling right here in Jersey City.
Okay, perfect. And then they do more sorting and conveyor belting and figure out what goes where, and then it gets shipped away. And in the US, we have somewhere between 8 and 11 actual plastic recycling facilities that take the plastic and recycle it. And pretty much they all burn it, which is, let's see if I can find, oh, I'm a little lost in my slides. Oh, maybe I don't have that one. So they pretty much all burn the plastic, and they burn it for a couple of reasons. They either burn it for energy, much like our trash is burned for energy. So that's considered green or recycling. Or they do this chemical process where they're pulling out the chemicals. That is not what the average person thinks recycling is, what recycling should be, and that's certainly not what any of us experts think that recycling should be. Right? Recycling should be you take a glass container, you break it down, and you make a new glass container. You take a plastic piece of packaging, you break it down and make new plastic packaging. But the challenge and the problem is there are so many chemicals in plastic that when you start commingling them all, you got this mush. You don't even know what you have anymore. So it becomes almost impossible to create anything useful from it. So that's the real myth for recycling. And that's why we always say, reduce the plastic. We're not looking for creative ways to recycle it as much as we're looking to reduce it. Reducing is the real good answer.
Or, we've taken to actually communicating that the fifth component of that is to just refuse to use it. Refuse it entirely.
Well, that's reducing, right? And the only difference between reduce and refuse is that I'm pretty sure you have a cell phone. You might drive a car, own a car, or take an Uber. It's all got plastic in it. I'm using a computer, it's got plastic. You can't get to zero. And
You can't, but you can certainly, yeah. So and this has to do with really the extended producer responsibility, if something is not being taken back by a producer, what are your sentiments about that? So if it's not recyclable, if you can't actually send it back to a manufacturer, what's your position on that?
I don't want it. But I was my daughter and I were traveling, we were on vacation, and it was a Monday. Mondays are hard days to be on vacation because a lot of restaurants are closed. We're on the coast and on the shoreline. And we tried to go out to lunch 3 different places, and we finally found some place that was open, a place I kind of liked. And the only thing I could really eat on the menu was clam chowder. I'm usually vegan, and there was nothing I could eat. So I got the clam chowder, and then I kind of got really scared, and I was like, oh my God, they're going to serve it in a plastic container. So I went up and I was like, oh, can I get that in a ceramic mug? And absolutely no problem. It's kind of fast foodish. But it came with a plastic spoon. And I was like,
Oh, my Lord. Yeah.
like what am I going to do? Am I going to not eat this? So I slurped up most of it. But it was hard to get the big chunks out, and I don't like to waste food. So I used the plastic spoon. And, you're going to find yourself in these situations where life isn't
To
perfect.
navigate, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you go to a cocktail party and you eat cheese and crackers or crackers and hummus, those crackers came out of a plastic bag. So just because you don't see it doesn't mean you didn't take it.
Totally.
So I just find that a total refusal is
I don't think that
hard.
there's total anything, but there's a party line about recycling, and people don't fully understand that. So, short of that, we're asking people to sort of be more conscientious about refusing to interact with some of this stuff. And they can do that less knowledgeably around all the science and just take a position around it.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, and just when I went on this little trip, I brought with me a stainless steel pot to boil water in for myself so that I wouldn't have to use any coated pans because I won't use those. That's a big issue. I did bring my own silverware, but on this one particular portion of our day, I didn't bring it with me. Um, I bring all kinds of stuff with me, and there's a lot of things you can do, but it's still hard. So
Yes.
this slide is really just reinforcing that it's a health issue, and it's not just that plastics are a health issue for two reasons. One, we're getting those nanoplastics in our bodies, but two, the chemicals in the plastic is leaching into our food, especially when it's hot. So, and that those chemicals then further hitchhike and stay in our bodies on the microplastics. So it's kind of like microplastics, chemicals in the plastics, and then the two kind of combine and they become like exponentially worse.
Yeah.
Um, and this is just a slide talking about particles in bottled water. And it's just more than anyone thought, because I think when some of the studies first came out, they didn't really know how to even count the nanoplastics. And now that they're able to, it is just mind-boggling how many. I've done a number of posts over the years about baby bottles, and children that are bottle fed with plastic water bottles get in excess of 1 million teeny tiny, whether it's micro or nanoplastics per day, over 1 million per day. I mean, it's just, yeah.
It's interesting that the federal health department is not, certainly not in this administration, but even previously focused on this.
I don't even know what to say. Like in the US, we ban about 13 chemicals from personal care products. In Europe, about 1,200 or 1,300. So, I
That's
mean,
extraordinary.
we
That
have,
is an extraordinary statistic.
and it's an oldie. This has been around for like, we've been
Yeah.
quoting this for years. Like, we are so far. And the real problem, this is so simple. It's all about the money, right? So big corporations have lobbyists that give politicians money, and they just don't put in place strong legislation because it's where their funding comes from. And nobody's ill-intentioned except for the big corporations, I think. But it's a real problem. And the good news is that states and legislators that care a lot make a big difference. So California's Prop 65 means that many companies have to comply with that. And rather than have one product for California and another product for the rest of the country, they just comply across the board. And that's true for like 1,4-dioxane is a carcinogen that's a byproduct of soap making. And so it's in laundry detergent, shampoo, all kinds of products. And New York State put in place a limit of no more than 1 part per million about a year ago. And that's ultimately going to change the way products are made across the US. So we'll benefit from other states making a difference. And when you see chain restaurants having the skip the stuff thing, like, do I want those condiments when that option is on the bottom? That's because they're already doing business in places like California that have skipped the stuff. So other states benefit from that. So that's ultimately, I think, how we'll make more progress as a country.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. In New Jersey, are there parts per million legislation
Nope.
going on?
Not for 1,4-dioxane.
Yeah.
And it's not even a listed ingredient because it's a byproduct of the soap making process. It's a really crazy thing. And when it went into effect in New York State, initially 2 years ago, they had the limit was 2 parts per million, with the following year going down to 1 part per million. And there was like over 1,000 companies that had exception. I was 30 years in corporate. I was a compliance officer, and you need time to comply with new laws. So it all kind of made sense to me, but you know, we've gotta start doing more. And so I think until people like you and me and everybody else who's working on environmental issues screams a lot and gets more people involved, and I think as more people get sick, we'll start to see more people caring and pushing for change, and that's how it will come. But we're
So
not.
what is the PFAS legislation in New Jersey? And isn't that related, when you say, to this conversation somewhat?
Um, is there PFAS legislation in New Jersey?
I'm asking you.
I'm not aware of any. I'm really not aware of any. And it's funny because I talk a lot about PFAS, and um, I will not intentionally eat from any pots, pans, baking cookie sheets, any of those things that have nonstick. And it doesn't matter how expensive those darn pans were. The only I won't use
What do
any
you think
ceramic.
about the ceramic pans?
The only one I will use is Le Creuset. And, well, two, and Extrema. Extrema is a solidly ceramic pot. But any of the modern coatings, I don't trust. I just don't trust them. And they get poor ratings, and I've never come across one that I think is safe.
Yeah, I was thinking the ceramics would be okay, but you're pointing to not all of them.
So the only so Extrema is a solidly ceramic pot. It's not a coating, it's a ceramic. And you can find ceramics that potters make. I mean, you can get a solid ceramic pot. I think those are fine. Um, I say fine, but keep in mind that crock pots have been known to have PFAS, so you do have to be a little bit careful, but generally a solid ceramic is okay. And Le Creuset, from my understanding, is that the biggest issues they have is the paint, the lead, that kind of thing. So they're not perfect, but I think if you're making sourdough bread, there's not a lot of choices.
Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you. That was informative.
Okay. So we're getting a lot of microplastics in proteins, but it's also in regular any kind of food. There's microplastics in all our foods. So the only way to stop plastic pollution is to stop making plastic, which, Deborah, when you say just say no, this is the point. Um, I love this picture because it just shows a lot of pointless
Totally.
plastic.
Oh my God.
And this one I included or kept in here because this is really just to say that there are alternatives to plastic packaging, right? In the store, yes, you can see behind me, there are containers that are plastic. The only way to move around heavy liquids is with plastic, the only logical way. But you can get every single product in the store pretty much in a powder or bar form that has absolutely no packaging. You bring your container, you fill it up, the ingredients are clean, there's no plastic packaging, no toxic ingredients. Like, there are lots of ways people can do better, and these are just some pretty mainstream examples. So zero waste really is this whole concept of um, having um, no packaging, um, no toxins, really no waste. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. Here's a little picture of the store, and just really this whole reuse and refill model I think is so important. And it's not just products that you fill, but being able to buy things like reusable paper towel or brushes or wooden spoons or products that are just better. Even napkins. Not when you don't buy single-use napkins, you're not buying a plastic package of napkins. You
What is
still
reusable paper towels?
it's just wipes.
Okay,
But the flannel ones here, they stick to themselves so they can roll around a paper towel roll, and it's the same process for family members. So, but you
so
can,
do you launder them?
yeah.
Okay,
If you would use a paper towel twice to dry your hands, you could use a reusable one twice. If you wipe up, chicken juice with your paper towel, you're going to use it once. If you wipe up chicken juice with a reusable, you're going to use it once and then wash it.
got
Same
it.
idea. But there's just so many ways to reduce our waste and our plastic.
Yeah.
Okay. EPR, extended producer responsibility. And it's really just putting responsibility on the manufacturer. And this isn't a new concept. Germany's been doing it for since like the 90s. It's really been a long time. And other states like Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, Oregon, Colorado, and California have legislation in place. But it's really important that we get the right legislation in place, that it have teeth. So the idea is that brands have to reduce their packaging and implement more sustainable models with reuse, refill, more concentrates, and consumers then get to bring packaging back or refill it. Brands will have to be accountable financially for recycling and for this material, and hopefully they will then invest more in
Sustainable
infrastructure.
materials in their
Yeah,
packaging. Yeah.
because, right? So just, I'm going to take a second and talk about those darned recycle symbols. So the whole plastic industry, which is the whole oil and gas industry, right? It's the same thing. They all decided that since people were worried about single-use plastic, they'd put those little symbols on the bottom, and people all thought that meant that it was recyclable. But it really was just an indication of what kind of material it was. And those tricky companies pushed recycling to municipalities. So think about it. Oil and gas producers make plastic, and then they expect that our municipalities will pay and create recycling processes for their trash. How does that
That's
make any
ridiculous.
sense?
It's always disturbed me very much.
Yeah, it is completely insane. So, but that's what's actually happened. And when people complain about recycling, they don't usually look to oil and gas or plastic producers. They're thinking my town should do better.
Yeah,
But we've completely like lost track.
this is a huge education moment opportunity.
It is. And I think that's like these are really important things. And so now let's talk about what Deborah, when you see my screen, do you see the three of us on the screen as well?
I do.
Okay, let me just, can I move that? Oh, look at
Yeah,
that.
it's fine. That's good.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it pops in. Okay. Well, anyway, so all EPR, right, which is here in New Jersey, we call it Packaging Reduction Stewardship Act, and there's two bills. S 3668, which was brought by Senator Smith. Lois and I went to the final hearing on this when it passed committee to move forward. And in Assembly, it's 5009. And it really is just focusing on any company that grosses $1 million in sales or produces more than a ton of packaging annually. And those are actually pretty small numbers, I think, that they have to reduce packaging by 50% across 10 years or over 10 years. And it'll be incremental. And the whole idea is that they move towards refillable, reusable options. And they also have to reduce secondary packaging. And they have to create a 70% recycling rate for,
What is secondary packaging?
it's like when they're shipping it and, like you can produce a
Oh,
bottle
I
of
see.
water, but then
Yeah.
it's got all that other stuff around it.
Okay.
So that's really what this is aiming at. We've got a long way to go for this to
So
be.
there's the whole supply chain issue. So they're doing business with distributors and they have to be responsible for the distributors packaging. At least have some reach into it.
Yeah, and also, let me see the next slide if it's the one I'm thinking it's going to be. Place. Okay. Wait, hang on. Yeah, okay. So ideally, this should really put in place, should really help to reduce the costs to municipalities, right? So
One would think.
every taxpayer should want this. And this is
And
another,
just you're showing the Senate bill.
Mhm.
number. The
Yeah.
distinction between the Senate bill and the Assembly bill,
Mhm.
is there something where we should be speaking with different representatives around each of these for some reason? Is it?
Well, the Senate bill passed committee and the Assembly bill has not. So the Assembly bill is behind. The Senate
Okay.
is the one to focus on. But the thing is, and we'll come to some action slides, we want everybody to call and make as much noise about this as possible because it's good for all of us consumers. And it's important for our environment and for our towns. And so the more we start talking about it, the better. So that's why we have both bills listed. But ideally, it's going to be, good for municipalities. This slide is a little bit more controversial. It's one of my favorite slides. But initially, we had in the bill that it would reduce the toxins used in packaging. And it would have prohibited some of these things that I particularly don't like bisphenols, PFAS, heavy metals, benzophenone derivatives, flame retardants. And flame retardants, I think, are really PFAS. So I'm not sure why that's separate, but there it is. Formaldehyde, toluene, antimony. These are all like really bad things. And oh, don't get me started on polyvinyl chloride or polystyrene, right? So this, I don't know if this will make it in the final cut because there was a lot of pushback from the lobbyists to not, specifically have toxins be reduced or have a requirement.
That would seem really important to keep in the bill.
Yes. So the slide is really here to say, when you call your representative, make sure you tell them that you don't want toxins in your packaging.
Right,
Um,
with an exclamation point. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. And the idea that, this particular bill has a really strong definition of recycling, and they don't want, the idea is that chemical recycling, this idea of burning plastics and somehow getting chemicals recovered from it or burning it for energy, that's not considered legitimate. So that was really important in this bill. And I think that's where, Judith has I really appreciate all of her expertise and this is important to her. It's important to me and Lois. This is no greenwashing. Thank you. We don't need more people burning plastic and calling that recycling. That does not count.
Thank you for that.
And it's really, again, this is just a kind of what we're talking about generally. If you're interested in more information, this advanced recycling idea is just kind of crazy. You should be able to create a plastic, get that plastic back, break it down and make it into a new bottle, or clean it and just put that bottle back out. So if you look behind me in my background, Oneka is a brand of shampoo and conditioners, and the containers just get reused, right? We're not producing new containers every time we buy shampoo, and that makes a big difference. So there are
So we
ways.
say that the term advanced recycling is a kind of a scam.
Yes, exactly. Do you think everybody who's listening to this knows what greenwashing is?
Yes.
Okay. So to me, it's just standard greenwashing.
Okay.
Okay. So really the point to make for everyone is none of us are to blame for the plastic pollution crisis, but we can all be part of a solution. What can Sustainable Jersey City do to help? What can any of us do to help in any jurisdiction? Or if you share this with anybody outside of Jersey City, we want to, push forward for support. Call our New Jersey senators and say, please support Senate Bill 3668, or call your assembly person for Assembly Bill 5009. Call or write elected officials. Calls do more than anything, and you can call them every single day. And my biggest tip to people is, if you want to call your representatives and you're nervous about it, just give yourself a couple bullets and call now after the offices are closed and leave a message. So you just want to make sure you your name, your zip code, and what it is you're asking for, and always make sure you give a bill number. It's really helpful. But leave the message after hours. They take down the information, and what you will regularly hear from all politicians is the more people that call on an issue, the more that they can go out and say in whatever they're doing, that I know my constituents want this because my phones are ringing off the hook. And it's their aides usually that take the call. It's super easy, but it's really worth doing.
I appreciate it. What was the assembly bill number again?
5009, and it'll be in the materials.
You're gonna send me the deck,
I
okay?
am, yes. Join Beyond Plastics. I actually probably should have said New Jersey, and support our Instagram. I will fix that. I'll say join Beyond Plastics New Jersey. So we have a monthly meeting. It's 1 hour, and it's really not hard to do, but it's a real way to start pushing for change in your town, helping to educate. So anybody from Jersey City who would like to join, we're always happy to have them. Also supporting our Instagram, which Deborah, you and I talked about. The more people that support, the more we support each other, the more people that see our materials, and we start to get these messages out.
Yeah.
Also educate by tabling, like whether you have, street fairs or green events, have a table to talk about extended producer responsibility, also known as Packaging Reduction Stewardship Act. Skip the stuff, any of the plastic legislation. It's just really, that's how we educate people. And movie screenings. Have you seen Plastic People?
Well, what we did was, Lois and I had a conversation. There are two movies that are out there, right? That people get confused between the two,
That is true.
right? So can you talk
So
about
one
that
is
for the
called
moment?
We're All Plastic People Now, and the other one is called Plastic People. Both are good. Lois and I just
Is there
recently
one
watched.
that Beyond Plastics has produced? Is that the distinction?
No, Beyond Plastics hasn't produced any movies to my knowledge, but we really like Plastic People, and it's approximately $350 for a showing. Unless you do it in April, it's free for Earth Month. Um, it's just, they're really good eye-opening movies. Also, Blue Vinyl was pretty good. It's a little bit older, but if you're not sure about vinyl chloride. It's a good one. It's older, but still worthwhile. And another one that Lois and I are screening is this is crazy. A movie called Stolen Springs, produced by, drum roll please, a 18-year-old high school boy. It's about a 20-minute movie. It's free. We're hoping to have him join us at an event up in North Jersey on Friday, I think. It's a really well done movie. And so he independently produced it. He created the content, he did the filming, he did the editing, he did everything. I've spoken to him, he's amazing. And what I would say is, I've got a lot of knowledge of plastic. I've been talking about it and sharing it on my Instagram for 8 years. I've been doing a lot of work with plastic. I've read a lot of books. He was spot on. I don't think he missed a single point that I would have said, this was missing. Not at all. He was amazing. So that's another good movie. Also
Yeah,
Letters.
if people could attend some of this, because I tell you, to get people out of Jersey City is using a crowbar that's, literally, it's never going to happen. But to be able to attend these screenings remotely, is that possible?
So I can send you a link to watch Stolen Springs. That's easy. You can host movie screenings in Jersey City, right? And get people together, which is
Definitely.
I wouldn't I wouldn't say like, come out to Westfield to watch it. That'd be a big lift. But some of them, like Plastic People, you can't show via Zoom or via electronic screening.
But maybe, and I'd just like to take the moment here, Ashwani, who joined us, he's the founding advisor for Sustainable Jersey City. He's a professor at Ramapo College. So potentially he can pull down one of the education licenses to show it.
Yeah, so Plastic People definitely has a less expensive, I think, or a shorter educational version.
Okay, great. And is there
So I
something
did,
here? Sorry.
just a second, I just did a search on the web. I found the web to be an inexhaustible source of information. I searched for where can I watch the documentary Plastic People, and I got a link which I'm putting in the chat now. You watch the whole movie. I don't know what the constraints are, but it's available for free if you just want to watch it.
So
I
in
have
other words,
programmed.
we don't need a licensing fee.
Okay,
to
I'm
film
blown
the
away
movie.
because Lois and I have spent a lot of time looking. We
Uh-huh.
actually we had a sort of we are able to do a mini screening before showing it, but I'm gonna have to we
No,
really
so there's a difference. There's a difference between seeing it yourself and screening it. If you want to screen it for the public, you need a license.
right.
But if you just want to see it for yourself, you can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Ash.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Ashwani, could you also share that link on Slack?
Sure.
Put it in the general
Sure.
channel, the articles and resources actually, and I'll expand on that. So here's the petition link. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave this here for a second. So if for anybody who is on, you point your phone at it and you should be able to, with your camera, grab this and get to the link to do the petition. Sometimes you need to expand, like zoom in when you're doing it. But this is to sign the petition. It's super easy. Like there's no reason that all of your, Sustainable Jersey City folks shouldn't do that. I mean,
Totally. We'll
5 minutes or
we'll
less.
put this out when we send out our podcast in May.
Super.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. This is a book that Lois is currently reading. There's lots of books to read. We could recommend a lot. I've got a lot on our website. This is probably one of my next reads. A Poison Like No Other. It's all about microplastics. It's good. And then this is just move you guys up. Okay. This is where to find us. So beyondplastics.org, a wealth of information on plastics. So Lois and I and all the chapters of Beyond Plastics, we don't have websites, but the National has a website and the amount of information is just amazing.
Voluminous,
It's
yes.
really good stuff. Instagram wise, we have an Instagram here, Beyond Plastics, and you can get it here. And Sustainable Haus is here. Sustainable Haus is really just about solutions for, everyday household. And I always like to share that.
No, I appreciate just knowing that people could get out of their chairs and take a car ride or a pooled car ride to Summit to visit you.
I ship to Jersey City on a regular basis, and we have people who come to the store and spend literally 2 hours there on a road trip. We've had people come from as far as California to visit us, and it's really fun.
And you ship to
yeah,
places like Jersey City. Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
very, very.
I have no idea how much time I've taken. Oh wow, we're totally at the hour mark. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, this is good. We usually, range between 8 and 8:30. So you're right on. This was fantastic. And again, what we're going to do is put some muscle behind this presentation. I appreciate this very much, Janette, not for anything, but we are about to kind of really activate our YouTube library, and I want to lead with this particular presentation, which is going to be great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate this. You parachuted in after your trip and you made this happen tonight with us, and I'm really thankful.
It's all good. We love being here. I'll give you another thought for a future topic.
Okay?
Probably fast fashion.
Yeah, you know, or slow fashion, you know?
Yes.
Where we want to go.
Yeah. So I'm a maker of goods. I don't make clothing for sale, but just the whole concept of, you know, good stuff, not good stuff. We just had Alden Wicker come to the store and do a like a book signing. She's written a book To Dye For, DYE. It's all about clothing
Okay.
dye and synthetic clothing, and it is. I have not learned as much from any book as I have from Alden. So that would be another
Noted.
topic, and I'm always happy to come back and talk about that in some future date. But yeah,
Okay,
it was so
well,
nice to be with you.
we've just begun here. We're just getting to know each other, you know, in a deeper way. We've tracked to beyond plastics, and like I said, a good part of this conversation, but haven't stayed plugged in around it. And we didn't have a personal relationship, and now we do.
Yes.
So this makes some difference. And, you know, we'll circle back. A couple years ago, we did a slow fashion event where we collected, you know, the county was hosting a huge Earth Day fair, and we collected runners' old footwear to sort of recycle it, right? We could say. So we became aware of the conversation, fast versus slow fashion, but we've not stayed on it. So we may circle back to you on that one too.
Awesome. Well, so nice to meet you in person or in Zoom, Deborah and Ashwani. Thank you for that link.
Good
I'm
to see
really
you.
excited to go check that out. And I will also, so Deborah, I'm going to send you this presentation.
Please.
I'm going to send you a link to Stolen Springs, the movie by the New York high school student.
That'll do it for the moment.
Great.
All right. And I'm going to just hold it that we're going to be in touch.
Sounds great.
Okay, very good. I thank you a
Oh,
lot.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Likewise.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.